Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. And today we're doing a first impressions of Nova Aetas Renaissance from Ludus Magnus Studios. Now this very much is a first impressions video, primarily because I got this game like 4 days ago, and the GameFound campaign ends in like 4 days, so there's not exactly a lot of time to go ahead and show you everything going on here. But with that, speaking of which, the GameFound campaign, I'll have it linked down below. That's going to be ending in a few days. I want to give you my thoughts, my impressions, where I'm at with this game so far, so you can act on that while the campaign is still active, and then hopefully at some point in the future, I'll come back with a full review once I've had time to properly go through this. But that said, I have spent multiple hours with this game. I've gone through a few scenarios. I can talk about what it's like to dive into the game, how hard is it to learn. I can talk about what I think of it so far, whether I'm excited to keep playing it or not, and the things I kind of like or don't like. But also I can't talk about a lot of things. I can't talk about how the character development is going to arc, the various classes that the characters are going to branch into as they upgrade. There's a lot of progression in this game that is present that I just won't be able to speak to, at least not yet. But with that, let's start by moving this giant box out of the way, because frankly it's invading my personal space and I could breathe a little easier with that gone. So, what is Nova Aetas Renaissance? What do I think about it? Let's dive into all of those things. So also worth noting, because there's a campaign active, this is not a prototype, this is a production copy, this is a final campaign for, like, being last chance to get your hands on this stuff, all of that. But with that, Nova Aetas Renaissance is a campaign game, a branching path campaign game that will have a degree of fail forward in it, or just has fail forward, that's going to give you various missions to go on, and then depending on the choices you make, whether you win or lose, you're going to be branching into the next mission, and this whole pile full of like 30, 40 envelopes that you will not be going through all of those in a single campaign. Rather, you'll be experiencing different ones of them depending on how things played out for you. But the core cycle, the core loop of this is you're going to go on a mission, which is effectively a dungeon crawler scenario. So we have one over here. This is the prologue. There's no spoilers in this video. I'll be showing you stuff in the prologue and prologue only. But you're going to have a prologue. You'll dive into that. There's a tutorial, a prologue, and the prologue is going to ramp you into the various choices you'll make, or the things that will go right or wrong for you as you go through it. So you're going to go ahead and set up over here, and you're going to grab these cards, which will be, whatever mission you're engaging in. The first card tells you what various things you need to grab. Second card tells you setup, and then from there, I'm not going to show you the rest of them to avoid any spoilers whatsoever. But the second will give you the various mission objectives, and then also direct you to read various chapters. We'll be reading from this book over here, and again, prologue only over here. We're going to flip this open. You'll read whatever's going on. What's the story? What's your backstory? What's happening? As you go through the mission, as you engage or talk to characters or open doors or read various events, you'll engage with other chapters or paragraphs on this page, eventually leading to you winning or losing or making choices and dealing with whatever the consequences of it are over there. So, you dive into a campaign, you dive into a mission, a bit of a dungeon crawler thing, where you're going to be managing your characters. You're going to have your 4 characters over here. You do have the option to replace them with companions if you don't want to control 4 full characters, but honestly, characters have all their upgrading themselves, and so it's a lot more fun to deal with that, or of course playing multiple characters, multiple players, and all that. But you're going to engage with these people over here. You're going to be using an action point system, which we'll come back to shortly, and then when all of that is done, win or lose, you're going to go ahead and deal with this map over here. We'll deal with the resting of, wherever you currently are. You're going to go ahead and rest on this side, where each character will visit different regions. Depending on whether you're a small city or a large city, you have different number of characters that can visit different areas, and so it's going to be the resting arc. Meanwhile, you're also going to have various skill points you've unlocked with the scenario, and you can utilize those to upgrade your character and add more skills or abilities to those characters, and eventually branch out into different specifications, where you'll flip this board open, replace it with a new board, a new character thing. They'll give you new stats, new whatever, as you get a new character, new abilities, and all of that in play. Past that, you're also going to be, this is going to be the first phase of a mission as well, where you're going to travel around the board. You're going to grab a bunch of events. Those might unlock various side quests. You're going to have the main storyline. You're going to have side quests. You're going to have hunts. You're going to have all these things you're engaging with. And then the core dungeon crawler aspect of things is going to involve you utilizing this clock to determine who goes next, in what order. You're going to see over here right now, these are the characters. These are my characters who are going to be acting next. And they're going to use those action points. So each one's going to have 5 action points right now. And you'll use those to move around the board. You'll use those for various cards to activate your various abilities. You use those to activate your actual abilities. Once you unlock more abilities for your character, you'll use those to activate those as well. So for example, if we were activating her right now, she can go ahead and spend her 5 action points to go 1, 2, and then go ahead and fire off an arcane arrow. She'll fire off an arcane arrow that uses 3 action points. She'll target one person, 1 to 6 range, and she has to use her intelligence stat and then hopefully roll at least 2 successes. Her intelligence stat over here is 4. She'll go ahead and roll, and she has to get at least a 5 because she's fighting against the Stradiote, and she rolled rolled a 7, 8, and 8, which is a very solid roll. Unfortunately, she didn't get any moon symbols. She would have loved to get that, because she's going to roll 2 damage and inflict an additional damage from each moon symbol rolled. So for instance, this one over here, that wouldn't have helped her hit the success, but it would have done additional damage against this character. The enemies on their turn, and on their hand, the enemies, once it comes to them, so let's pretend we've moved all these people up forward, they've all taken their actions. It's also worth noting, by the way, you could take partial turns. So for example, this guy, maybe he just goes 1, 2 and moves 1, 2 over here and doesn't do anything else. Maybe he just stops there, which means his turn will happen sooner. As the clock moves around, there's going to be a timing element where you can choose how to activate your characters so they can possibly take multiple turns before an enemy activates, which could be the 1-2 punch you need to take them out before they get the drop on you. From there, once it goes to the enemy's turn, this clock's going to keep moving every single turn, and now it's the enemy's turn. The enemy are going to go ahead and activate. Generally, they're trying to kill you, but sometimes they have their own other goals they'll be dealing with, and they'll go ahead and attack, and they always hit to an extent. They don't have to roll to hit, but rather you roll for defense instead. So it's basically always you rolling in the game, as you make various skill tests, either to go ahead and attack, to deal damage, to evade damage, all of that in the game. Past that, you have specific objectives you're going for in the game, things you're trying to do, which will be on those cards over there. Maybe you're trying to escort somebody, maybe you're trying to kill enemies, maybe you're trying to get into a building, because there is going to be this nice little 3D terrain over here. We have a ladder propped up against this building over here, we have our tree, we're trying to possibly get into this point of interest to be able to get into the building, which may or may not unlock additional things. You'll have scenarios that are set up, and as things happen, you don't necessarily know what's going to happen, but you may unlock more stuff, have to set up more terrain elements, and more baddies entering the map, and all of that. That's the core cycle of what's going on here. There's a lot of other things that we haven't gotten into. There's threat dials over here, which will track as you deal damage to enemies. You'll be upping your threat, which will make you more of a target. You're going to have all these various cards, these little cards over here, which give you more equipment or spells that you can unlock, but all of them require certain materials in the game. So you have to unlock those materials from these different decks over here. We have injuries, we have, I don't even know, we have travel events, we have so many different things that we're not heavily getting into over here, just because of the nature of just trying to cover a brief overview of what this game is. But that's the core idea. You dive into a bit of a dungeon crawler episode. You have to deal with the travel phase, the actual mission, the rest phase. You're going to go ahead and have branching ways that the game plays out depending on the choices you make, and win or lose. Continue that process until you finish the campaign. That is basically Nova Aetas Renaissance. And this is where we dive into the first impressions. What have I seen so far? What is the game like? What do I think about it? And I'll start with the first thing, which is how easy is this game to dive into? And the answer is very with a caveat. There is a caveat there, but the very part is they have this read me first tutorial over here, and they mean it when they say read me first. You can read this tutorial over here, which will have you go through a tutorial mission that's all dealt with in this book over here. It'll tell you what to set up, it'll tell you how to go through things, and this 12 pages, maybe 45 minutes or so of just setting up an encounter and having things play out as you go through a kind of scripted first scenario. There's some degree of agency, some degree of things how like things playing out more variably, but ultimately it's going to give you a very scripted 45 minutes or so scenario that will teach you a decent amount. It'll teach you enough of what you need to know to be able to dive into this, or feel confident that you understand the arc of how things play out. That's the good news. The bad news is, in addition to that, we have this handbook over here, which has all these various symbols and status effects. This is the thing you're going to want on the table to constantly reference, because you're going to have a lot of things from images to statuses to keywords that will all be in there. And then this is the homework part, because this is the less fun. This is the asterisk part. We have over here a 59-page rulebook full of all these other things you have to know about that have, first of all, it has the campaign arc over here, which this part you do need to read. There's like 8 or 9 pages over here of what these things you need to read just to be able to run the campaign. But then past that, we have the sections, if you want to do an attack test, like class points, it's a fully indexed, A to B enemy draft over here. We have our destiny cards. It might seem out of order, but that's because that's a sub of the hero and all the things about the hero. And this will give you a lot of information that is sort of essential. Meaning, just from my own perspective, I have not fully read this, and I'm playing the game just fine. But I will say that my arc was about 45 minutes of playing through a scripted tutorial, may even be less than that, I might be counting setup, but not that long. And then from there, diving into an actual full prologue, and that's where you'll start to have to read things that you didn't really read because you haven't read this yet. And so it's very easy to get the overall arc of how things work from this tutorial. They do a great job of getting you in there. I did not have to read a 59-page rulebook. I literally set it up and just started playing, going through the tutorial as it taught me exactly what to do. From there, there's keywords and abilities and all these small little things that you didn't really get that you will have to reference both the handbook and the rulebook as you go. So I would say my own opinion is that you can dive straight into a tutorial without having to touch a thing. Once you're diving into the prologue, expect to be pulling this up the first few turns as you read things that you didn't realize beforehand. And there's some things that are just kind of missing that aren't really fully covered, so you'll have to go through it that way. And then after that, once you're diving into the second mission already, I find I'm already referencing this far less frequently, with the caveat that whenever there are rules that I'm not referencing, it is possible that I'm doing some things wrong and I just don't know that I don't know. And until I fully read this, I might not know. Is it impacting my enjoyment? Not really. I think the tutorial was on rails. The first mission was, interrupted by referencing. And by the time you get into the second mission, it's already good enough to be able to feel like I'm playing the game and to feel like I know what I'm doing. Obviously, if I did a film playthrough, I'd find out very quickly the various things that I missed and didn't realize that I was doing wrong. That's going to be as far as the ease of diving into it. So overall, I am very happy with the ease of diving into things. For the most part, it was a very smooth, streamlined experience, especially considering how big and overwhelming the box seems to be. I would say I was able to get up and running pretty quickly. As far as what I think of it so far, and again, please understand that some of the elements that are very key to keeping your interest in a campaign game are things I haven't had the opportunity to see yet, so I'm still, hence the first impressions title. So far, I like it. I can't say I'm in love with it, but I like it. I think that first of all, the table presence is great. The miniature quality is great. The art is great. Those things are not what make a game, but they are good starting points to reasons why I might want to like a game. And even just the 3D aspect, even just having that first mission where you have someone standing on a building and a ladder to climb up and flip a lever, that's stuff that's good. That's stuff that keeps your interest. It makes you want to like a game system more, and I think that's the starting point of Nova Aetas Renaissance. The starting point is a game that looks good and has loads of powers and abilities I haven't yet explored, and I want to see how I can build my characters. And there's more characters in the box as well, and you can proxy in or out characters as well if you want. So there's a lot of things here that make me want to like the system that I'm experiencing, but the elements that are, I'd say a lot of the elements of Nova Aetas Renaissance are fairly basic elements that you'll see in a lot of games of this nature. It's hard to reinvent the wheel, and so I'd say 90% of this game is using standard things that work, and they work well here, but it just feels like another game that you have, tiles on the board, you have characters you're controlling, you have enemies you're fighting against, you have things and events that happen along the way. This has been done before to a large extent, and the first thing that makes it stand out is the table presence, miniature quality, art, graphic design, production. All of those things are important because 90% of what Nova Aetas isn't new. It's just their own spin or version of it. I like it, but I have to also acknowledge it's not necessarily innovative for most of it. The areas that do feel very rewarding, very challenging and whatnot is I really do like this wheel over here. One of my favorite things to do in the game is to realize that, right about now, over here, it's this guy's turn. This guy already is over here, let's say. And right about now, it's this guy's turn. And if I choose to only use 2 action points, let's pretend these guys are over here. If I choose to only use 2 action points instead of, 3 or 4, whatever, I'll be able to go again and do what I need to do. And so the timing of this wheel, the way you're going to constantly reference that to be able to get what you need done, to choose how and where to spend your energy and your efficiency in the game, it gives you a lot of control in a way that very often does make you feel clever. And you combine that with the things you're trying to earn, the start of your activation effects, and you can push the system in a way that feels like you're getting a bit more out of it, which does feel rewarding to go through. Past that, I'd say a lot of the agency you're going to have in the game, a lot of the sense of agency is going to come through as you develop your characters, as you go through a mission, and as you choose how are you going to go ahead and spend that point over there. What's more appealing to you? Do you want astrology over here, where you can hopefully go ahead and give your teammates astro tokens, which are going to help them as they do different effects? Do you want sacred fire over here? Or maybe, this character over here, what's her name, Rebecca over here, she starts off very quickly. If you get 2 skill points over here, you can use them to make sure that all your spells are burning your opponents. Is that more or less helpful than getting doe eyes and being able to shield yourself every single turn on a regular basis? Do you want to prioritize additional damage or additional defense? How do you want to build out your characters and spec your characters in this game is going to be a big part of how things work. That combined with the various upgrades, the equipment you gather across the course of the game, that's where a lot of the sense of agency is going to come in. But again, I have to say that many of the things going on here don't necessarily feel innovative, but it does work well. There's a difference between innovative and working well, and so far the system works well. The enemy AI is quick enough and easy enough to follow. The sense of choose your own adventure is present. They're gonna have fun little cards and things that, you'll have various often cards that act as their own interaction points as far as spending your own action economy on different ways that you're trying to engage with the system. The choices you're making as far as who you engage with, how you engage with them, and how you move forward in the game, those things all work well. I think the biggest overall impression I have of Nova Aetas Renaissance so far is it's a game that takes the campaign dungeon crawler genre, puts its own minor spin on it, and ultimately it doesn't end up feeling massively innovative, but it does feel smooth. It gets you in fairly quickly without having to read a 60-page rulebook, even though there is a 60-page rulebook. The system is rewarding and fun to go ahead and roll those dice, attack enemies. The clock over here is an innovative, fun thing, but then past that, it's powers and abilities, and dungeon crawler, and equipment, and it does work well while not being innovative, but having great table presence and still... I mean, I feel like I keep saying the words, it works well, because that's ultimately where I am in this. I am not blown away by this truly innovative experience, but it's a fun game that I want to keep diving into it and see where it goes. And the fact that you are dealing with this choose an adventure aspect, not really choose an adventure, but more of a branching pathway aspect, means that I am incentivized to dive into it and see how things play out in different ways. Now, I will say one thing that I'm intrigued by, and I can't speak to this 100% because I'd have to play through it again or start opening envelopes that I shouldn't be opening, is I'm curious how much of the branching pathways are things you might just not experience if you don't lose. How many of these envelopes are envelopes that I'll just never see because I happen to not lose those missions that brought me there, and the only way to see this content is to lose? I don't know the answer. I don't fully know the answer. Again, I've only dived into search, and I've only gone through what I've gone through, and I haven't tried exploring the different pathways to see where things could go or how it branches around. So some of that I don't know. But if you're looking for a game that's going to be replayable, I can't speak to whether this is replayable or not yet. I can say that you and I might have different experiences as we go through it, but is it different enough that I'll want to go through it? Will I have to go to like the 4th mission before I lose and find the experience of branching pathway, and how branching is that? Some of those things I don't know yet. And I want to see the characters develop more, because so far I've enjoyed playing them. I've enjoyed using their abilities, using their items. I've enjoyed all that, but I haven't been able to fully build out a character, to respec them into their advanced classes. Those are things that I still need time to fully see. And so the depth of the system and how rewarding it gets, as you have 4 different characters, each with their own fully spec'd out systems and abilities and all that, I haven't seen that yet. I've seen characters that I do want to continue growing, that I've had fun playing with, and overall I want to continue going into the system because, again, it's smooth, it's clean, it works well. I'll keep saying that, and ultimately is a good game, but not necessarily one that feels not. I don't have different ways to say it. It's a good game. It works well. There are small elements of it that are innovative, and the rest of it is just a system that you're used to if you've played this style of game, and it works well. I'm going to stop saying that. But that's where I am so far. As far as the elements I haven't gotten to see so far, that's mostly going to come down to the way you upgrade your character, the additional skills you have, the additional campaign stories I haven't gotten into because there's a lot that I have not explored. And so I think let's move to final thoughts here, and there's not going to be a rating attached to this one, but I think as far as overall final thoughts, right now where I am on this game is that I like it, but I'm not yet at the point where I could say, hey, this is worth the fairly expensive cost that it has. And it's not that it isn't, it's that I haven't yet gotten to see those things. Right now I want to keep playing, and it's going to come down to a few core aspects. The table presence is great. That is a factor. The overarching, the strategic elements on the table are there. I do feel like I'm making choices as far as how I manipulate the system to try to win. The fact that it works well. I've said that a few times, but it works well. I'll say a big one is the fact that there's not so much content here. It does not feel overwhelming. I don't feel like I'm signing up for hundreds of hours of who knows what. I feel like this is a manageable system that might be, and I don't know for sure, but it might be 50 hours of playing through this to be able to experience that. It doesn't seem so intimidating, and that does help. I currently, I have a core box only, and I'm kind of happy that I only have a core box because I don't want that additional levels of just 7 other boxes that make me think I'll never really finish this. Right now, when I'm currently looking at this as something that, hey, maybe I'll play through this, maybe I'll finish it, and then I'll move on from it, unless it massively impresses me along the way, where, again, it is impressing me, but with the caveat that it gets harder and harder to review these things sometimes when you're balancing them against all the other dungeon crawler campaign games out there and how any one of them stick out in any particular way. So if you're looking for a recommendation, I think that ultimately my main recommendation for this one currently, based on where I am right now, is that it kind of depends on what else you have in your collection. If you have a lot of these big box campaign dungeon crawlers, then I don't know if you need Nova Aetas. I like it. I think it, I'm not going to say the words, but I like the game. I think it's good. But I don't know if you necessarily need to spend the fairly large amount of money it'll cost to get this if you have 7 other systems that you're not playing through anyway. If, on the other hand, something about this compels you, something about it calls to you, and if you're looking to just know, okay, I know I want it, but is it good? The answer so far is yes. So far it's good. I just don't know if I can point to the specific edge aspects of it that make it an essential compared to any of the others. And it's not that it's any worse than the others either. It's just operating with the framework of understanding that this is an expensive game, and to that end, there is a difference. I think that's what has me holding back throughout this review, first impressions, whatever you want to call it, first impressions. I like the system. I just recognize that right now, especially if you're looking at this because you're looking at the Game Found campaign, you're trying to see if it's worth it. It is an expensive game. And I think that knowledge, combined with trying to figure out what else you have in your system, is the only thing holding me back. Because so far, I've had fun with it. And I do want to dive into it, and I do want to play it more. And that's a good thing, especially when I play a lot of these games, and some of them make me want to play them more, and others not nearly as much. And so right now, I enjoy it. Whether it's worth the fairly large price tag is a whole different conversation that comes down to your personal situation. So I guess that's where we are on this one. That's Nova Aetas Renaissance. Again, sorry if I'm a little all over the place. I think not being able to see the full system has me held back a little bit, and then knowing the price tag of the campaign has me held back a little bit. But if you want to know whether I enjoy it, I mean, as of right now, I plan on continuing to play through it, and I hope to finish the whole thing. I don't know exactly when, but I hope to. I will acknowledge at the same time that sometimes you get halfway through these things and my opinion changes after I'm 30 hours in and I'm like, you know what, I've seen enough and I'm ready to move on to the next one. And I just don't know where this will end up in that scale. In any case, until next time, I hope this is helpful in some way. I understand and acknowledge it's not the full breadth of information I usually like to have around something I'm reviewing, but I'm just limited on how much time I have to be able to give you the information, and that's kind of where I'm stuck at the moment. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.